Hi there and welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth. My name's Anna Pirelli. The comments that you see here are my views, beliefs, opinions, and sometimes they are not even my fully formed views, beliefs, and opinions. However, they are my understandings. Please do retain an open mind and reflect on any of the content and your comfort levels. If your views differ, please feel free to leave a comment. Also remember, it is possible to disagree in respectful ways. My way is not necessarily your way and vice versa. You might also find that some of the content on this playlist in regard to spiritual or universal laws, it resonates with you, meaning it feels right to you, while other laws may not feel right or they may not feel comfortable. If this is the case, the information is either not right for you or it is not right for you right now, and it might never be right for you at any given time. It really doesn't matter. As an earthy and practical person, I can put my hand up with all honesty and say that I have at different times had the same feelings about some of the content in here. And with some of them, I still have a level of skepticism within my viewpoints, but I choose to retain an open mind about the things that I don't fully understand for a few reasons. Firstly, because I believe it would be supreme arrogance to think that we all know all of the answers while we have a body. And because what is right for one of us is not necessarily right or suitable for all of us, and I choose to respect the differences. Please do leave your opinions, beliefs. Feel free to argue the points in a respectful way with any of the content on the slides and even my interpretations. And if you feel that you can add clarity around some of the content, we would all love to see it. Thank you. For now, though, let's explore the laws.
All creation is governed by law. The principles that operate in the outer universe, discoverable by scientists, are called natural laws. But there are subtler laws that rule the hidden spiritual planes and the inner realm of consciousness. Contained within these laws, or conditions, is the true nature of matter. Knowledge of these laws has an effect upon the mental urges. Mind is the builder. Stay in full mindfulness of the application of universal law as related to self and to others, and know that in love all life is given, in love all things move. In giving one attains, in giving one acquires. In giving, love becomes the fulfillment of desire, guided and directed in the ways that bring the more perfect knowledge of self as related to the universal, all-powerful, all-guiding, all divine influence in life. Love is life. When we go back, merge with the God source, in some infinitesimal but profound way, we expand the mind of God. Our higher self always points the best and most perfect way, and it is ours to listen and choose or reject what we hear. It does not blame, but patiently tries again to show the perfect way, the loving way. All of creation pushes forth. We are ever becoming. Identity ever remains. Universal law number 46. The law of karma. This is the natural principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. It is ever at work with chains of causations and effects that govern all of life and manifested matter. If a person was to follow each chain link of causation, it will be found that it has its beginning and endings in the non-material realm, the realm of spirit. It affects the throwing of dice on a gambling table or a rock slide that is caused by rain and wind. Each can be followed and understood to the observing mind, which sees the cycles in all things and realizes that all things follow the great law. The law itself is elusive and cannot be proven other than observed with the mind, and is used to determine the causations and effects of any event. When this law is used with conscious effort, desired results can be produced in a person's life by steering him or herself along definite paths of causation. When the law is used in an unconscious and haphazard mind, the effects could become potentially disastrous for the individual or group of individuals. So-called accidents could occur without warning to individuals who toil through life without awareness. We are responsible for the very thoughts that we produce and the final result of our own mental alchemy. Fear is one of the most dangerous mental causation that prevents a person from thinking and acting as the higher self would prefer. The cause of fear is the result of a lack of knowledge about the unknown God, which should be the most important educational journey in a person's life. The causation of fear can only be removed through knowledge, wisdom, and understanding universal law, the reality that we live in order to produce the desired effects in our lives. The greatest evil under the sun, according to Hermes/Thoth, is not knowing God. In every minute thought, action, and deed that is performed, a person sets into motion unseen chains of causations and effects which will vibrate from the mental plane throughout the entire cellular structure of body, out into the environment, and finally into the cosmos. Eventually, the vibratory energy returns to its originator upon the return swing of the pendulum. All this in less time than the twinkling of an eye. Because there are 7 dimensions of reality in which causations can occur, we remain unaware of many reasons for effects. By understanding universal laws, we can learn to operate in grace instead of accumulating karma, restrictive. This law is mechanically or mathematically operative. Its workings may be scientifically manipulated by men and women of divine wisdom, fully realized. The karmic law requires that every human wish find ultimate fulfillment. Therefore, desire is the chain that binds man to the reincarnational wheel. Karma is attracted only where the magnet of the personal ego still exists. An understanding of karma as the law of justice underlying life's inequalities serves to free the human mind from resentment against God and man.
Okay, so if we thought karma was completely simple, this is another really big one to unpack. I don't think there's any issue getting the concept of cause and effect, that for every action there's going to be a reaction or a consequence, and that this is an ongoing cycle throughout life of thoughts, actions, reactions, responses. But then we've got the things don't happen by accident. So we need to unpack that a little bit, right? Is this saying that everything happens is pre-planned? Well, I interpret the everything happens by law and not by chance as actually being about the fact that not everything is predetermined, but of course there are going to always be impacts and effects, and they're consequential, right? They are the consequences of actions by somebody somewhere. They might not always be our actions, but maybe they are to some extent, because we might be living quite peacefully, and I use the example of within a democratic nation, minding our own business, trying to be good people, but at the same time, as with a person living in an area of strife or political unrest, we can be impacted by the decisions of those people that are in power. So when it comes down to the choices and cause and effect, if we personally voted these people into power that are making these decisions that impact on us either pleasantly or unpleasantly, well, they hold power over us and influence because we put them there, right? On the other hand, if we didn't vote for them, we voted against them, and the majority of people did, then I don't really know how that would refer to our choices. I guess the fact of the matter is that we're still going to be impacted anyway, but it's not necessarily our fault, and it's not through efforts on our part, but perhaps it was that it had to happen. I don't know. But either way, where am I going with this is, if we didn't vote at all, then I guess that we would be complicit in what is occurring and the power that's being used over us, because we gave away our power by not voting. This is just thoughts and putting it out there. Of course, your viewpoints are welcome. And the other thing too, I guess, is that even if, let's say, we were in a democratic society and we voted against the person that's in power, we've still got choices there on how we manage our life conditions at that point in time. Anyway, so I get the fact that cause and effect is a concept that binds all of us together. It's inescapable. It encourages us to be responsible with the use of our thoughts and action, because not just, or what we think or do is not just going to impact on us, it's going to reverberate around to those people on us. This law does talk about the fact that it's not just what we do that creates a reaction, it's our thoughts as well. I'm going to go into that further in one of the next slides. In the part of the law where it says all cause and effect is linked to the spirit realm, I would say, look, even the part of the law where it states if a person was to try to find the beginning and ending of an event as to the cause and effect of something that's transpired, they would find that cause in the spirit realm. Well, to me, that does actually make sense, because on the earth plane, everything is determined by people, a person, unless it's a natural disaster or earthquake or so forth. So this kind of expands on the idea of the democratically elected political leader, but it can be any leader. You know, we're all on a journey to enlightenment, if you like, tapping into that divine spark and our eternal wisdom. And clearly not all leaders understand this, or certainly not leaders of nations. You know, some are actually quite unenlightened. Some leaders think that they are enlightened, including religious leaders, and they have this belief that they're superior and somehow more informed than others. My belief, of course, is that if a person was truly enlightened, I can't see that an enlightened person would ever declare war or violence on a person for any reason, or seek to create hardship or pain or suffering for another person, regardless of what's going on. If each person on their path was enlightened, I think they would seek to raise humanity with love and kindness. Now, of course, that is an aspiration that I believe lies in most people's heart, even those that we might judge unkindly. If we know people and we don't think highly of them, I tend to believe that most people think they're doing the right thing, even if they're not. I'm actually going to make a reference here to a paper that I reviewed when I was at university, because this is what supports my belief that I think most people are doing what they think is the best thing. The paper was won by a guy called Bandura, and his paper was called The Theory of Moral Disengagement, and he explained in his position how he believed good people could justify doing incomprehensible, if not reprehensible, damage to other people. So moral disengagement is known as a set, just for your information, I'll give you some background, of social cognitive mechanisms whereby individuals can justify doing this damage because they believe it's going to preserve their self-image. Actually, it sounds pretty horrible, really. I'm going to put a link to the paper. Actually, not a link, I'll put the name of it in the description so you can find it if you want to, because it is fairly interesting. But basically, the context of the law says that these people's, or not the law, his paper says, these people's actions are unconscious, they're unaware of their own motivations, and they're unaware, of course, I would say, of the laws of karma and the impacts of their decisions, because they don't necessarily receive them, the consequences I'm talking about, immediately, or sometimes even in this lifetime. You know, we don't get to see karma play out. So anyway, the way this might work is you hear a person complaining to someone else about a political decision, and the person beside them will say, I don't care, it really doesn't impact me, so I'm not bothered. Prime example. I would say these people are not aware of their levels of consciousness and haven't developed compassion or empathy, and not necessarily because they're bad people, but simply because they haven't been able to observe or taught the cycles in school. The cycles are definitely observable for those of us who have got our eyes open. Even if we don't claim to be spiritual, we will see the cycles of impacts, if you like, and lots of people definitely speak about it. So I suspect a lack of education about our history is the reason why many people actually can't see and learn from the patterns of the past, because people and their personality and their base fundamental needs ultimately don't change from one century to the next. The small and the big things have got cycles. So, for instance, from an individual human perspective, we've all got emotions, we're all triggered, and we all have choices in how we respond to those triggers. We can choose how we act, we can choose obviously making decisions, and on a wider social perspective, we can see throughout history that every single country, when the citizens become downtrodden enough and they're unable to afford things like food and housing, they will always rise up at some point. They will unify and rise up. There become rebellions, which are led by obviously people for whatever purposes, to ensure that their government and leaders take better care of them. And this is where I believe the idea of being present and living in the moment can be misinterpreted. Because if we fail to learn the lessons of the past, then we're not making healthy, informed choices toward a more positive future. This is where I see that the law is correct within the context that we're reading it today, because the law is elusive. We have to be observant, we have to watch, assess, notice, analyse, change, and be aware of what is going on. And when a decision is made by leaders that might be impact, well, just look at the effects and the potential impacts of some of these decisions by these people in power, and how that is going to affect others and their quality of life and their ability to be able to access these base and fundamental human needs that we've got. You know, I come back to that point of that if we're not watching what's going on or paying attention to what's happening around us, we are in fact giving away our personal power and potentially restricting our future choices. So I can see how this law applies to our daily life by way of conscious decision making, and I can see how taking responsibility is about balancing karma in positive ways, and that ultimately we're all responsible for raising our awareness by increasing our knowledge and our understanding, and desiring to be godlike, as in, if we wanted to forget the law for just a moment and just look at the academic studies by Bandura, we'll see that while he doesn't articulate the law in the same way, he does refer to people justifying harming others out of fear. That normally, these people that would define themselves normally as good people and virtuous, such as churchgoers or religious leaders, that they can justify inhumane actions because of their fears. And straight away I think of obviously the conflicts that we've got going on in the world today, which is in Ukraine and Israel, probably more so Israel, because depending on the reports that you're reading, both sides are committing atrocities to each other, and the atrocities that they are perpetuating on each other would be crimes under the Geneva Convention because they're against children and civilians. But they justified taking these actions because they hold fear that the other party that's on the other side of the strip will use unfair power over them. So even the wars are based on fear. I might hold that thought there and go on to the next slide. This is such a big slide today, sorry. Right, okay, under this law, incidentally, I just want to make mention of the fact that I believe it's saying that the people who will pay the biggest karmic price are actually the warmongers, the leaders who called war or declared war, because there is this overall cause and effect, and that will carry over into all dimensions. So I would expect, based on this law, that the leaders are going to have a really rather large karmic debt, regardless of their intention when they called it. They're living chained to their egos, and I interpret this law and the comments about freedom from bondage to be, one of the things is, when a person can't shift, or when a person can shift past their ego, they're able to unchain themselves from drawing towards them negative karma, and they start to live under the law of grace. To liberate ourselves from attractive negative karma, we must develop compassion and a mindset of fairness and justice. I don't see how breaching the Geneva Convention actually has got a mindset of fairness and justice, just my thoughts. And I want to just remind people here that the law of justice, we did cover this, remember, is basically where, I'm sort of loath to say this as well because it sounds a bit biblical, but basically it's vengeance is mine. If you want revenge upon your enemy, you know you have to let go of your ego, and in many ways, like the Christian Bible, turn the other cheek, or on a more practical level with one of the other videos that I've done more recently, basically sit down and break bread with your quotation marks enemy. Leave the balancing of karma to the divine and simply get on with your life, right? This is how I interpret it, of course. Speaking of breaking bread, as you're aware, I did a ruling number, and this was how the negotiations commenced for the Northern and Southern Ireland conflicts to be resolved, was actually around a dinner table where the leaders were able to see each other face to face and to see each other as humans and not just the enemy. And this occurred through an independent third party who brought them together, obviously with the English Prime Minister, for discreet conversations so that they could start to build this rapport, if you like. They might not have agreed with each other through the exercise, if you like, of breaking bread and having a meal. These people were able to look at each other and see each other as humans, recognise that their motives were actually good. They had good intention. They were hoping to improve circumstances for the people that they were fighting for. And so even if they didn't agree with what the other party was saying, they were able to extend respect to each other and then negotiate the boundaries. So I guess maybe underlying this, if we're talking about the law of karma and what might be happening with these fighting bodies at the moment, I don't see a lot of respect, humanitarian respect for each other. I guess where I'm going with all of this is when it comes to the big stuff, yes, there is that awareness that, yes, for every action there will be a reaction. But also, in fact, yes, for every thought there's going to be a reaction as well, or a consequence. I'll talk about that in a moment. But the real thing is that, don't worry about trying to balance the scales of justice if you feel that you've been badly done by, because if you leave it to the universe is going to take care of it. I guess there is other laws that come into play with what I just said, because that kind of sounds irresponsible if you just turn around and say, well, I'm not going to worry about anything. I think, yes, you do address problems. That's that active decision making. If you see an injustice occurring, then of course I feel that we're obligated to stand up. But do we declare war? I'm not sure that we do, right? Well, in fact, I'm sure that we don't. I don't believe that the war is the right thing to do. What I would say is potentially, and I'm trying to sort of pick the right words here, is that perhaps when we see injustice and our conscious calls for it, and we want to right what we perceive to be a wrongdoing or a gross violation of another person's rights, then perhaps we need to raise it and approach it in the right context, which could be through the legal system, not the legal system, through voting. It could be through peaceful protesting, stuff like that. But anyway, back to here, the simple example, this slide here, the content. Somebody explained to me karma years ago was, and this is what I always understood it to be, that what you put out there comes back to you, even if it's as simple as an unpleasant thought or an uncharitable thought about another person. And they said to me, if you think about this, pay attention to your own physical body movements, and you'll notice that if you are thinking happy thoughts about somebody, you smile, right? And when you smile, the worst case you're going to get is a few smile lines, okay? If you frown, because if you're thinking unkind thoughts, and you'll notice this about yourself now when you start thinking, oh, I don't like them, or oh, they're just so frustrating, or whatever, you will notice that the expression on your face changes and it looks not kind or pleasant. It just totally changes that whole facial expression stuff. And he said, worst case scenario, even if it's just a brief moment, he said, you get the little lines in between your eyes, the frown lines, and you might get a few wrinkles in strategic places, which wrinkles are fine. I don't have a problem with that. But frown lines, sometimes we can't help it. I've got a couple of them, and I don't call them frown lines, I call them concentration lines. But the more you frown, obviously, the deeper these lines become. So he says you end up with an angry looking face. I thought that was a really good way to simplify it, actually. So, my friends, it's been bigger than Ben-Hur today. I'm sorry about that. Please do feel free to leave your thoughts, understandings, interpretations. I always welcome them. I shall now love you and leave you and catch you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.